Hi everyone and welcome to Book Booth. My name is Rachel and today I'm going to be doing my November wrap up. So I had a lot of books on my November TBR. I think I had like 9 books on there and that really wasn't realistic. I kind of knew that to begin with, but I was hopeful. But I only got through 6 books in November, but I got through some good ones and some different ones, some interesting ones. So I'm excited to talk about them today. So let's go ahead and jump in. So the first book that I ended up reading was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. If you haven't heard of this book before, then you haven't been around BookTube a whole lot because this book has been everywhere. This was sort of the huge release for V.E. Schwab in 2020. There was a lot of anticipation behind it. This is the book she's been working on for like 10 years and been perfecting and working on for a long time. We've had a lot of anticipation for it. The story behind this book is we're following this woman named Addie LaRue, who is actually born in the 1600s, I believe, and she starts to feel claustrophobic in her small town in France, and she's being forced to marry and live a very specific life and basically expected to live and die in this small village, and she's not having anything of it. She wants to be able to escape, to explore, to live her own life as she sees fit. So on the eve of her wedding, she ends up making a deal with a devil to live forever. The only catch, though, is that she actually will be completely invisible in the way that no one will remember her. Not even her own family, not a single person that she meets will ever remember her. And on top of that, she is to live out her life until she's ready to give up her soul to this devil. And so he kind of comes back year after year to ask her if she's ready to give up her soul yet. And she goes through centuries and centuries. It starts in the 1600s and goes all the way up to pretty much present day, to where one day she goes into a bookstore and meets a man that finally remembers her name. This is a truly unique story. It's a very fascinating story. It is poetic. It is heart-wrenching. I mean, just the idea of being basically a ghost in the world. You can't have your own home because no one knows who you are. You can't rent an apartment. You can't really she doesn't really have any of her own belongings other than what she's just wearing. And whenever she wears, she has to like steal. She just lives this completely invisible life. She has a lot of one night stands, but basically it's because she has to. She can't have a relationship with anyone because the next morning that person, after they've gone to sleep, has no earthly idea who she is. So she lives this completely, honestly, very sad, just extremely lonely life. But she also has this desperate desire to travel, to see the world. And she sees so much of the world change, starting from like the 1600s to now. I mean, just think about all the history that she's seen. And it's such a unique concept. I'm going to use my notes here and look at those to kind of help me remember what I want to say, so I apologize if I'm looking off screen. It's a slow burn book that has a melancholy, nostalgic vibe. It's very poetic and it is slow going. I knew that going in. I kind of heard that. It's a very slow burn book. It's a unique travel through time with an invisible woman who never ages or is remembered by anyone. It's such a unique tale. It's interesting to follow Addie throughout her long life to see the changes that she sees. I had trouble processing the culmination of this story. The ending didn't exactly hit where I expected it to, which I guess is a good thing. It's nice when you see an ending that you don't expect, but I still have trouble processing a little bit. Obviously, I don't want to say what it is because no spoilers. This book was very atmospheric. It felt like a work of art. Again, it was very poetic. There was a lot of atmospheric wordplay, and is that the right way to say it? I don't know, but it's very atmospheric, it's very poetic, it's very melancholy, it's very introspective. So if you're kind of in that sort of mood for a book, something that's more slow burn, slow going, makes you think, this is the kind of book for you. It's not necessarily my type of book, but it was still really good. And of course the picture ends up dying because I'm talking too long. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. Now, this particular book isn't really something I truly loved, which I had a feeling going into it I probably wouldn't because it's not my type of book. This isn't the kind of thing I normally read, kind of like the slow burn, more heavier topics, heavier themes. Obviously, we follow this woman who's going through her entire existence just not being remembered by everyone. And it's sad. I mean, it's really depressing to think about. I mean, the fact that she has no family, really no friends. She has nowhere to call her own, no person to call her own, nothing. Like, it's sad. It's really depressing. So it's a very heavy book, but I do recommend it. If you want something that's atmospheric and poetic, then I would go for it. I feel like it's a good book to read like the beginning of the year. So I think it's a good one to read if you haven't gotten to it yet, to read it maybe in January or something. I feel like it would be a good start to the year. It'd be a good book to go with. All right. So the next one I read was a YA book. I'm going to find the cover here for you. And it's called The Wise and the Wicked by Rebecca Podos. I'm going to see if I can try to explain what this book is about. It's a little bit difficult. So it's kind of a magical realism type book. We are following this family who's originally from Russia, I believe. And in this family, it's an entire family of women, and they are all witches, but they have a very specific power, basically only one power. They are able to see their time. So at a certain point in their life, usually in their young life, maybe when they're about a young teen, they have a vision of seeing when their death will happen. They get to see basically who the person they've become. So they get an idea of around what time they're going to die and how they die, or at least how they feel when they die, which is a very sad and depressing thing to think about. And then once that moment happens when they've seen their time, they all gather together. And that person that saw their vision of their time will write it down in this big tome. They don't tell anybody about it, what they saw, but then when they do die, they all gather again together and read out loud what that person saw at their time. So far throughout all this family's history, their time has always matched what is written down in the book, what they wrote, until one day, one of their great aunts, I think, passes away, and they read the time, and it doesn't match what happened to her. In fact, her time makes it sound like she's supposed to die years before. So all of a sudden now, the main character we're following, who has seen her time, she's starting to wonder if she's actually able to change her fate. So that's sort of the general gist of this book. There's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot more history in this family. There's a lot more different types of magic we run into with this story, but it's a very interesting concept, and I actually really enjoyed it a lot. It's an interesting mix of real-world family ties and history and magical realism. The family ties and responsibility is highly involved in this story, as is the folklore kind of behind this family and what their magical kind of prowess in this family and magical history in this family is very heavily involved in this. It's a terrifying concept of seeing your time, knowing a general idea of when your life will end. That's pretty crazy. I also wonder, like, how much you would live your life differently if you had an idea of when you would die. Because obviously we don't know when. It could be tomorrow. It could be 5 minutes from now. It could be years from now. You don't know. And the idea of like someone actually having a vision and seeing when, at least around when they're going to die, like having an idea of maybe how old they'll be, like that's kind of freaky to think about and terrifying. Overall, it's an original concept of magic and folktales, even though the story wasn't always engrossing. I didn't feel always sucked in by the story. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. I do recommend. It wasn't mind-blowing, but it was a really interesting mix of magical realism, real-world type stuff, but then also with this family that has this history. I really loved reading this story where there's a lot of family ties. There was a lot of sisterly bonds. I liked reading that. I always like to read stories that are focused a lot on family. So this one was fun. I do recommend it, but it wasn't one of my favorites, but it was really fun. And look at that cover. It's freaking gorgeous. All right, the next one, I delved into some more Neil Gaiman. I decided to read Neverwhere, if I can find the cover. I have a lot of covers listed here, and I am struggling to, there it is. All right, Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. This is a weird one. As I've said a bajillion times, Neil Gaiman is the Tim Burton of books, honestly. And one of the interesting things about this book, the one that I read had sort of like a foreword at the front from Neil Gaiman, and I actually found out that this was originally written for a TV miniseries. So there is a TV miniseries out there. I think it came out in 1996, and he actually wrote the book and the miniseries at the same time. So he wrote the story originally for television, but he was writing the story in a book form at the same time he was writing the script, which I thought was really interesting. So they don't match perfectly. There's certain things that he wanted to put in the TV show, and they were like, no, we don't want that in there. And he was like, that's okay, I'll just put it in my book. So, which was kind of funny to read about. But this is a really strange, odd weird. That's like 3 words that mean all the same thing, but it's a weird book. We're following this gentleman who lives in London. He kind of lives a very basic life. He's engaged, but the person he's engaged to is kind of controlling. He kind of just lives his life how everyone else expects him to. Until one day he has a chance encounter with a woman that changes his life forever. He is pulled into this place called Neverwhere. It's basically a whole nother city underneath London. It's this sort of underground, strange city. There are a lot of nomads and strange people and strange creatures. It's basically, think about a city underneath London in the sewers, like this whole civilization that nobody up above seems to know about at all. It's like this invisible city, and it's really weird and really strange. That's basically all I can tell you about it, and there's a quest involved. So it's a very weird story, I will give you that. It's got typical dark and strange Gaiman vibes. I struggled to feel connected or invested in the characters or plot. It was just so strange, and I just never felt fully connected to any of the characters. Even the main character, I don't know what it was about it. There was just some kind of disconnect for me. The idea of a hidden underground city is a fascinating concept. It's interesting how the TV script and book were written at the same time. I thought that was really cool. I wouldn't mind maybe watching the miniseries someday. I feel like I may enjoy watching it more than reading it. I don't know, but of course I don't know how different it is from the TV show. But I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars as well. I think I'm going to continue delving into Neil Gaiman's works. He's written a lot of stuff, and most of his stuff honestly sounds really interesting to me, so I think I might read some more in the future. It wasn't really my favorite, but it was still really interesting and a fun read. After that, I jumped into an adult thriller, which I have been getting into this year and loving it so much, and I read The Whisper Man by Alex North. In this story, we are following this man and his son who have recently lost their wife/mother tragically to a heart attack, and they end up moving to the small town that his wife is actually from. They decide to sort of leave the home that they were in with her. There were too many sad memories, and they tried to start from scratch, and they end up moving to the small town their mother is originally/wife is originally from. In this small town, there was a serial killer back in the 80s, I believe, and he was nicknamed the Whisper Man. He ended up capturing different little boys, and he ended up murdering them, and he was caught, and he's now in prison. Again, this happened in the 80s. So when this man and his son move there, some of these murders start to turn up again. The thing about the Whisper Man is that before these children are taken away, are abducted, they hear someone whispering outside of their window, and that's what kind of draws them outside. They hear this voice talking to them, and it starts happening again, even though the guy that originally did it is in jail. So it's a thriller, it's a mystery. It was so much fun. I had a blast with this one. It's another fun and intense mystery thriller. I enjoyed the fast-paced feel of short chapters and rotating perspectives. I always enjoy, just in general, when books have really short chapters, but this one definitely did. And it was constantly bouncing around between different perspectives, which sometimes can get confusing, but with this one, it didn't. I didn't feel confused at all jumping into different perspectives. I was interested in all of the perspectives as well. I had a good time reading every single different character. So it was really fun, and it created a very fast-paced read, which I always enjoy in any book, but especially in a thriller. I will say this is the first time reading a thriller that I guessed some reveals. However, I still enjoyed it overall. There are a few things I ended up guessing in this, which is weird for me. I don't normally guess correctly, if at all, just guessing at all. And I did on some of these, but it didn't take away from any enjoyment for me. I really enjoyed it a lot. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. I had to remind myself how many stars I gave it, but I highly recommend this one. This one's a really fun thriller. Honestly, I feel like this is a good introductory thriller as well. If you're wanting to get into some adult thrillers, I recommend this one. It's very fast-paced, very fun, very creepy. It's a good time. I really liked it a lot, so highly recommend. This next one I'm really excited to talk about because it was one of my anticipated reads for the year, and that is Hollowpox, The Hunt for Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This is the 3rd book in the Neverwhere series. It is a middle grade series. It has lots of magical nostalgia feels to it. It's very much got a feel of kind of Harry Potter. It's not Harry Potter. It's not like a copy of that, but it gives you that kind of vibe. It's got very nostalgic, warm vibes to it. If you've never heard of this series before, we're following this girl named Morrigan Crow. She was born on kind of like the unluckiest day on the unluckiest year. And in this town that she lives in, she's blamed for everything. Even if somebody stubs their toe, they blame Morrigan for it because she's the unlucky girl and she causes everyone misfortune. And the thing is, other than that, she also is destined to die on her 11th or 12th birthday. I can't remember. One of her birthdays, 11th or 12th birthday, she's destined to die. Just that's it. She's got like an end date of when she's supposed to die. And this date's coming up and she's expecting to die and everything. And then this man named Jupiter North kind of whisks her away to this magical place called Nevermore, where she attempts to get into a school for, I forgot the name of the school all of a sudden. I think it's, the acronym is One-Sock. Anyways, it's a magical school vibe. So if you want magical schools and warm, tender friendships and just magical beings, and it's so much fun. I enjoy this series so much. I can't say too much about what happens in this book because of spoilers. I don't want to spoil anyone who hasn't read the series at all, but I will say this is my favorite one out of the series so far. And okay, I think I wrote this down. Yes, I did, so I won't say it yet. My favorite series so far, just like I said, there's something so cozy about the atmosphere, and the beginning gets you in the holiday feels. This isn't really a spoiler, but the beginning of this book starts kind of around Christmas time, and it is so cozy. It put me in the holiday cheer just immediately. I loved it so much. It is so warm and cozy. I really enjoyed the overall mystery feel and getting to delve more into the world and Wondersmith history. So it was really fun to just get to know more about this magical place called Nevermore, more history behind it. We got to see more magical creatures and things, which was really fun. And there is a lot of mystery in this book, which I always enjoy when there's a lot of mystery and intrigue. I'm so excited because I found out recently that this is going to be a 9-book series. This is only book 3. I am pumped. This series is so fun. If you haven't jumped into it yet, please do. It is so worth it. It's a great time. So I highly recommend it. I ended up giving it 5 out of 5. I absolutely adored it. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the last book that I was able to read in November. And it was, again, another anticipated read for the year. And that is Instant Karma by Marissa Meyer. She's one of my auto-buy authors. She has written several different series. The Renegade series, which is a superhero series. She wrote the Lunar Chronicles, which is a sci-fi twist retelling of a bunch of different fairy tales, which is so good. She wrote Heartless, which is a backstory to the Queen of Hearts. So fun. This one is very different though than what she normally writes. So she normally reads like either sci-fi or fantasy. This is a YA rom-com, which is not my thing. I am not interested in books where the main focus is romance. It's just not my thing. I know some people adore it, and awesome for you if you do, but it's just not my thing. I usually like more story focus on other things other than the romance. So I knew this one was going to be more romance focused, but I love Marissa Meyer and her writing style and just her storytelling, so I was excited to jump into it. In this story, we're following this girl who is all about just doing the best she possibly can in school. She has to get good grades all the time. She's all about productivity and getting things done. And she is working on a project for her science class, I think. And it doesn't go well because if she feels like she's pulling all the weight, the guy that she's doing with, she feels like is just useless and he's just doing nothing. And then one day she ends up going, I think she's at a restaurant, she slips and falls, hits the back of her head, goes unconscious for a few minutes. When she wakes up, all of a sudden she has the ability to bestow instant karma onto people, whether good or bad. So if she sees someone littering, she can make something bad happen to them. Or if she sees someone do something good, she can have something good happen to them. So she kind of has this almost kind of like magical power, and it just goes on from there. So it's a really interesting concept. I liked the kind of more magical dose thrown in there. So it made it fun. Let's go ahead and check my notes here. I'm glad to say that I enjoyed the story, even though the book's focused on romance and it isn't really my thing. I saw a bit of myself in the main character, the overachiever perfectionist type, but I'm glad I'm not quite at that level. She was hardcore. I'm a type 1, which means I'm all about getting things done right, perfectionist. to-do list kind of person. That's definitely this character as well, but she was that at an extreme. I mean, at extreme. I'm not that hardcore. I'm close, but I'm not that hardcore. I enjoyed the focus on marine life and conservation. So this whole book takes place in like a seaside town. It takes place during the summer, so it's very summery, and there is a lot of stuff about sea and wildlife and conservation in this book, which I found really interesting, especially since I was super into marine biology when I was a teenager. Originally, I wanted to be like a marine biologist, which I didn't end up following that dream, but but it was really interesting having that in this book because it was something fascinating for me to read. I will say that I really wish I would have read this in the summer. I'm slightly confused by the release date. This is very much a summery book. It's set in the summer. It's set in a coastal town. It's very summery vibes, yet it was released in November, which I find odd. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I don't know if people normally focus on releasing books within maybe the time that they are. Like if there is a summary book, if they usually try to release in the summer or the spring, or they just don't care. I don't know. I felt like I would have enjoyed it more, I think, if it had been the same outside. Like if it had been summertime outside, I think I would have enjoyed it more. I ended up giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I couldn't remember if I did 3.5 or 4. I didn't love it. It's definitely not my favorite Marissa Meyer book, but I still enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend it. If you really like to read books that are more rom-com-y, romance focused, then you probably will love this book. It was really cute and really fun, but it's just not quite my thing, so that's just why I didn't give it as high of a rating as I have for Marissa Meyer's other books, but I'm really glad I read it, and it was a lot of fun. So those are all the books I read in November. Regrettably, not as many as I would have liked to have read, but hopefully I can make that up a little bit in December. But I read a lot of fun books and different types of books, so it was a great time. Let me know down below what your favorite book you read in November is, or let me know if you've read any of the books that I listed today. I would love to talk with you about what you thought about those books. On this side of the video over here is my logo. If you click on that, you can subscribe to my channel, follow me on my book journey. On this side of the video over here is a suggestion for another video if you want to watch another one right now. But thank you so much for watching. You rock, and don't forget to keep reading.